was dark, streetlights threw shadows through the park. I was late, first impression I failed to share.
Couple walkies. Come, 1, 2.
You stayed
No.
a little bit shorter than I
Mama, come
expected.
for walkies. Come on. Give me this.
I was sure I'd lose my cool, but somehow I kept it. That was the first time I laid eyes on you. You were mine. I gave you every excuse that I had. As we wondered, oh, how I lasted for longer. Through alleyways, romantic games, the next few days we fell into each other. You were my one true real life lover. That was the first time I laid my eyes on you.
Good morning. It's probably around 9:30 in the morning. I'm just up at the main house. The rain has started today already. It's supposed to be pretty rainy. We actually haven't had a lot of rain, so it'd be kind of nice to get some rain today. It's dribbling a little bit, but it's supposed to pick up pretty quickly. The winds today are going to be about 35 knots, the highest this week, but it's been a really windy week. So it's been a bit of a, slow week for me as far as going outside goes. Last week I didn't have a video because a project I've been waiting on kind of came in. Well, a little bit of it came in. The full job isn't quite here yet, but we're just in the preparation stage. It's a client of mine, and they're located in Idaho in the United States. They're a really good client. Yeah, so I've been working on that this week. I did get a few things done. As some of you might know, when the owners were here a couple of weeks ago, they took the stove out of the main house and put it into my cabin because my stove had a little bit of a hiccup. So the spot where the stove came out of in the main house here was quite filthy, so I just cleaned up the floor around it and washed it. It's probably been many years since that part of the floor has seen water, but yeah, it wasn't too bad. I think there's dirt that's just never gonna come up. So yeah, so I tackled that. Because I don't have a lot of footage this week, I thought what I would do is tell you another story about my time caretaking a property in 2014 on the Sunshine Coast. So the property that I was caretaker of, it is still located on Price Channel up just past Desolation Sound. It's definitely cougar country there, and it's grizzly country. I didn't see any grizzlies while I was there, but I did see a black bear quite a number of times. Kind of like this island, it was a black bear that had been around there for a long time and was believed to hibernate right near the marine resort there. So yeah, I got a few stories about that guy. So this property, it ran on hydropower. They did have a diesel generator, but the main power came from a very large waterfall that was probably about a 15 to 20 minute hike, depending how fast or how slow you go. At the time, from what I understand, through word of mouth, etc., in the marine community, they've actually upgraded their hydro system. So from what I've heard, it's actually quite modern now. But back when I was caretaker there, it was still a really old-fashioned kind of style Pelton wheel. So the water came from the waterfall, and right at the base of the waterfall, there was an intake. So it was just basically a big hole that was dug in the ground. I think it was cemented. It was cemented over with a grate that was supposed to catch, pardon me, that was supposed to catch any debris like leaves, flotsam, anything that would go through. They didn't want anything going through there, but sometimes it did. So the intake would sometimes get plugged. So imagine you got water coming in and then it's going through this hole, and at the end of that hole is this huge pipe that went down a hill all the way to the marine resort, and that supplied the hydropower. So when debris got stuck in that intake, then the water couldn't get through. So the pressure was reduced, and if you have reduced pressure, then the Pelton wheel won't produce power, so it ends up shutting down. In the cabin that I was staying in, the owner had installed an alarm. That alarm would go off if the pressure in the hydro system itself was decreasing. If the pressure is decreasing on the hydro system, that means that there's less and less water coming through. And when there's less and less water coming through, that means you have an issue at the top. When that happens, you have to turn off the Pelton wheel right away, because if that keeps going and there's no water coming through, it can overheat and destroy the generator. So that stupid thing, it went off. It never went off during the day. It always went off at 2 or 3 in the morning, but oh, that's another story. I was wandering through the pitch dark in Cougar, black bear country with a headlamp and a dog. The dog was not Buttercup. I always left her in the cabin. She would have got me killed, I'm sure. Anyways. But with the dog that lived at the resort. So as soon as that alarm went off, that dog was because he lived outside, he would be at the door. Like, he would actually hear the alarm and he would be sitting by the door when I went out. That was the scariest thing that I did when I was there, is those, because when it's dark up there, it's dark. You can't even see your hand in front of your face. So literally I would put on my headlamp and just look for glowing eyes. And by the time of the story I'm going to tell you came around, I was carrying a shotgun with me every day. So the alarm went off, I think it was like 2 in the morning. I got up and the dog came with me. I turned off the alarm. I turned off the Pelton wheel. So once that system went down, I immediately had to turn on the diesel generator. So so getting back, there were actually lights, but getting there, because there was no power, I had no lights. So and I had to turn the diesel generator on in total darkness. It was so crazy when I think back. It goes off at 2, 3 in the morning, always happens. I get up, get it switched over, get the diesel generator on. So then first thing in the morning, before I did anything else, I would have to hike up to the waterfall to figure out and fix what was going on. The owner didn't, like, he had hydro system, he had free power, so of course, why would he want, what kind of bird is that? Oh, that's a pigeon. Weird. Huh. That's not a pigeon. Looks like a chicken. A really small chicken. Anyway, he's still there. I have no idea what kind of bird that is. So, I don't know where I was. So the next morning, I would have to hike up and just figure out what happened so I could get it fixed, so I could get the diesel generator off and get back to running it on hydro. So Teddy would always come with me up to the waterfall. I would not bring Buttercup because if we saw any kind of animal that she wasn't familiar with, other than deer, she was very comfortable with deer, but if it was like a bear, a cougar, she would be gone. Like it's like her mind just goes blank. She wouldn't even head back to the cabin. She would just go straight up a hill. Like she would just go in the opposite direction. So I just didn't trust bringing her. How old was she then? She was like 2 years old then, maybe almost 3. So, but anyways, so Teddy and I had the shotgun with me. By that point, I was taking the shotgun wherever I went because I just was so worried about running into cougars. So it was about 5 minutes into the hike up the hill to the waterfall, and Teddy started going mental. Like he just started barking, and I could tell he was barking at something specifically to our right up the hill. So like the path, when you go to the waterfall on the right, you've always got this kind of hill and forest, and the left, it was always kind of downhill and forest, if I remember correctly. It was a long time ago. But anyway, so when Teddy started looking, I turned and looked to my right, and there was a cougar just standing there. It was, how far was it? 100 meters from us. It was far enough, like I could make out that it was a cougar, but it let us see him. Like it wasn't hiding, and it was just watching us. I had the shotgun with me, but I didn't shoot off a round because I had Teddy there, and Teddy eventually quietened down. Like he eventually stopped barking. He was always wary of the cougar, but he stuck to me. But he stopped barking, I don't know, maybe because the cougar didn't do anything. So I had to get that intake cleared. I had to get that hydro system back and running, and I had the shotgun with me, and the cougar was pretty far away. I could see him. He was letting me see him, so I thought, well, I'm just gonna keep going. So I kept going, and every like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, Teddy would let out a growl, and I'd look up and the cougar was there. So it started to follow us along the hill. Like it stayed on the hill and it followed us. So the creek that led down to the property from the waterfall was on our right, except there was the big hill, and then it just went down on the other side to the creek. So the cougar was at the top of the hill, so he just stayed on the horizon there. Anyway, so he literally he followed us, of course, he followed us all the way to the waterfall. And then at one point, right when I was getting super close, like probably within about 20 feet of the waterfall, I didn't see him anymore. He just kind of disappeared. So when you get to the waterfall, there's a creek that goes down, and then there's just the waterfalls. It's mind-bogglingly beautiful. It's massive. It's just so gorgeous. So at the base of that waterfall, there was the intake. So I had brought waders with me. So I put the shotgun down and I left it on the rocks on the shore, and the owner had shovels and anything you needed to dig out debris that was stuck in the intake. So I just got my waders on and I waded into the creek, and what ended up what had happened to the intake is the weirdest thing. 2 trees, because it was super windy the night before, 2 trees, one on this side of the creek and at the base of the waterfall, and one on this side, had literally fallen at the same time and collided and exploded over the top of the intake. It was unbelievable. It was the biggest mess I'd ever seen. And so I waded in to see, like, get the shovel and see if I could jog anything loose, and it was not coming loose. Like, that was in there. You needed either big muscles or a chainsaw, something. As I was trying to push the logs, which didn't work, Teddy was on the shore and he started just going crazy again, and I thought, oh no. So I'm looking around me, and right in front of me, so I was in the middle of the creek, and how wide was the creek? 50 meters wide? It's pretty wide. So I was in the middle of the creek, so let's say 30 meters from me, on the other side of the creek, was that cougar. It had come down. It obviously went down the hill and crossed the creek and came up on the other side. And he just sat there and watched me. Like, he didn't come at me. He just sat there and watched me. And I was freaking out at this point because Teddy was on the shore, and he was barking, like just going up and down the shoreline, barking and barking. And I thought, okay, obviously he's not going to come in the water to rescue me if something happens. And I'd left the shotgun on the shoreline because I didn't want to take it into the creek with me. So I was like, oh. So by that time I knew, like, there's absolutely nothing I could do to clear the intake. So I just was like, okay, Mr. Cougar, I'm just gonna back up. So I started backing up, and as I started backing up, he kind of stood up. He stood up taller. I was shaking in my boots, but I kept going, and I think I slipped a couple of times and fell, and it was pretty scary. So I backed up, got to the shoreline, and then I grabbed the shotgun, and the owner had me, because I didn't know how to shoot a shotgun before it, which is, don't even come at me, because to this day I can't believe I didn't shoot myself in the foot or something. But he had me load it with buckshot, a slug, buckshot, a slug, buckshot, a slug. So I knew that I had buckshot in there. So what I did is I just shot one buckshot in the air, and the cougar just got up and took off, and I just made sure the slug was in the chamber, and then Teddy and I just booked it. Like, I didn't run, because I thought that's like the dumbest thing you could do if a cougar's out there after you. I didn't run, I just walked quickly back to the cabin. Anyway, so that was it. The cougar didn't attack. He was actually, I just think he was more curious about who we were and what we were doing. But yeah, so that's the second story about the cougar. That intake, I felt bad. The poor owner, him and his family, they lived in Edmonton, and he ended up having to get a flight out from Edmonton in the middle of winter to the property, and him and I went in there, and man, he was a daredevil, because he went in and he was pulling logs out. It was so dangerous, because those huge logs, like, he was just grabbing them and pulling them and like jumping out of the way before because the creek was really fast. Just before the creek just took it and took him with it. But yeah, so the two of us together, I didn't do a lot. Like, he got the big stuff out, but I ended up cleaning up all the little stuff and getting the intake cleared once all the big stuff was gone. But holy, that was a big job. But yeah, so that's my second cougar story. Those are the only, so my previous video where I told my cougar story, that was my first video cougar encounter, and that was my second. I've only had 2 like actual cougar encounters. I've had lots of bear encounters, but those are the only 2. Bears I don't mind so much, but yeah, cougars scare the living daylights out of me. I think what I'll do is I'm just gonna go close the shed door, and this rain is starting to come down pretty good. So I think before it gets too crazy, I'm gonna get back to the cabin. So Buttercup is in the cabin right now. When I left, she was snoozing. I gave her allergy pills. Pretty much as soon as she gets her allergy pills, within about 15 minutes, she just goes straight to sleep. I think it's just such a relief not to be itchy that she goes into the deepest sleep when she gets her allergy pills. It's fantastic. It's so nice to see her getting a solid sleep, because at night she's so restless. And I know, because she's so itchy, and she knows she's not allowed to scratch, and she's such a good girl. Like she just will not scratch, because she knows she's not allowed to, because if she scratches, she cuts herself, and it just gets really bad. So the look she gives me when she needs to scratch are so sad, but she doesn't do it, and so she just ends up pacing. And poor old Buttercup, and I can't give her more pills because of her size. She's at the max of how many of those pills she can take. It's super unhealthy for her to be taking any more of those pills. So she can only have like 1.5 pills every 24 hours, because otherwise it would be really dangerous. But if she didn't have them, she would literally go insane. Poor old Butter. Anyways, so I'm just gonna close the shed door, and then I'm gonna go back to the cabin, and I'll probably edit this video, and that will be my day today. So I hope everyone had a wonderful week, and I appreciate you listening to my story, and I'll see you next time.